REM sang a song, It's the End of the World as We Know It. Leafs fans are singing that song this week as the Leafs lose their third straight, this one in overtime. Todd, Kyle, Dan, Furzy, the new NHL is leaving the Leafs in the dust, saying goodbye, old men.
It's a little bit problematic when you watch the Leafs aging blue line and their failure to kind of jumpstart the rush. They can't get a timely save if their life depended on it these days. And even yesterday against the Kings, building a 2-0 lead when you think they're going to get a one-game boost, or I guess I should say a couple, with Austin Matthews out of the lineup. Lo and behold, their defensive frailties let them down. And you begin to wonder, how long does Craig Berube remain the man behind the bench?
Yeah, it's almost not an unfair question at this point. This team was such a serious threat last year, but now there's genuine talk about, well, maybe we rebuild. What do you make of that?
Look, I think it was a flawed roster coming into the season. You know, everyone that talked about losing Mitchell Marner and where that point production was going to come from, guys that produce 100 points don't just grow on trees. And you look up and down this Leafs lineup, I think the expectation that Matthew Knies was going to take a step forward was fair to make. But at the same time, he still has a long way to go. Jonathan Tavares is starting to age, but he's aging at least like fine wine. So the contributions are there, but they're not getting the production from some of the depth players that they thought they could when it comes to scoring goals. And maybe most importantly, they're just not getting saves. I mean, last year, credit to Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll, they masked a lot of this team's defensive deficiencies with a save percentage that we didn't think was sustainable. Lo and behold, the goaltending has kind of slipped below average. And here we are with the Leafs finding themselves in a firefight every single night. I think the only one that has to be enjoying the recent run we've seen from the Leafs is Mr. O'Toole, because it's rinse and repeat. Bet him over the total every single night. And you've been able to retire with 13 or 14 out of the last 15, all exceeding odds makers' expectations.
I was going to ask you about that. Is this an oddity in the NHL this year? There seems to be a lot of goals being scored so far this season.
And as someone who loves to bet unders, it doesn't leave me feeling warm and tingly on the inside. But, you know, the interesting part about the Maple Leafs, maybe more so than other teams, is they're still taking under money nearly every single night, because so much of the totals market is predicated on the underlying metrics. And not to get into the nerd stuff that's out there, it's more about the expected goals and what you think you can forecast going into a game, hoping that goaltending regression is right around the corner. But we didn't see it against the Kings. We sure didn't see it against the Boston Bruins. And eventually you have to adjust to what you're actually seeing out there on the ice. And right now it's the Leafs struggling on the blue line, struggling in net. So when the freight train is barreling down the tracks, I'm not going to get in front of it and try and catch the falling knife and bet their games under the total. That's for damn sure.
Okay, Todd, well, how about we try and find some sort of positive? Is there like a future bet we could put on John Tavares? Because he scored number 10 and 11, and he's been great this season. Help the fan base out, buddy.
Do we want to say a future bet where John Tavares goes before the trade deadline if we get a fire sale in any capacity? No, I mean, John Tavares deserves a world of credit. I mean, he's a guy that has gone out there and performed like a consummate professional. Hasn't really spoken out and expressed the same frustrations we've heard from some of the other Leaf superstars. But you do wonder what he's thinking. Of course, he took a little bit of a franchise-friendly deal to remain in Toronto. But clearly, this isn't what he bargained for. He wanted to have a chance for them to compete in the Atlantic and make potentially a deep run in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. And right now, you're looking at some of these numbers around the Leafs. There's legitimate concern, like you guys alluded to, that you should be betting this team at a somewhat advantageous price to be on the outside looking in of what has become a truly muddled mess and a mushy middle with the Eastern Conference from top to bottom.
Let's talk some baseball because the Leafs are just aggravating people right now. My favorite thing about the Leafs is there's some little Habs fans or some little Leafs fans walking around asking their dads, why can't our team be more like Montreal? So we've got some free agents. I saw a great quote from, I don't know if it was an agent or a player. He said, players are now not using the Toronto Blue Jays as leverage, but they see it as a destination. Things have dramatically changed in the span of one season as the eyes of the baseball world have been open to the possibilities of a good Blue Jays team and a country that supports one team. So we have a lot of free agent banter, Todd.
And look, and rightfully so. I mean, the season they put together this year, somewhat improbable when you look at their odds entering the 2025 season and the way they were able to exceed odds makers' expectations, such long shot price tags. And I think something that we have known for those folks that have followed baseball for a while, when the Blue Jays are good, that is an electric building to go into and play. And so unfortunately for the Jays, they come up just a bit short, but it does open the eyes of agents and players that are hitting the free agent market. And you look at some of the comments from Baseball Insiders, we've seen some of the biggest names in the sport potentially being attached there. We'll, of course, see how the Bo Bichette contract situation unfolds if they can retain his talents. But you've seen a name like Framber Valdez potentially linked there to anchor that rotation, knowing that Max Scherzer probably doesn't have a ton left in the tank, and they'd like to try and find another frontline starter. Maybe Kyle Tucker, whose displeasure with his experience in the north side of Chicago was well documented throughout the year. That could be a big bat to anchor that lineup. But a lot of reason for optimism, and hopefully for Jays fans, this is the year that people don't use them as a measuring stick. I mean, we all remember what the Shohei Ohtani situation looked like when he was rumored to be going there, taking dinners, and then we come to find out that they use the Blue Jays more as a stalking horse than anything else to land that very lucrative deal with the Dodgers.
Let me just jump in here, because if the Jays got Framber, they would be the first team in Major League history to have a Framber and a Sir Anthony.
Hey, I mean, you have to try and go out there and win the all names Olympics if you can. I mean, we throw in an Addison, we throw in a variety of other names.
Dalton.
You can be the all-name team, and then maybe start the third rendition of Roadhouse with a Dalton there to man the door for everybody.
Left boot. So in addition to some of the names you mentioned, Todd, Dylan Cease, Michael King, and even some talk of Edwin Diaz going to Toronto, or the Jays showing interest in trying to bring him there, I should say. Does that sound about right to you? They're just trying to upgrade the pitching here, because this offense, best contact hitting team in baseball, highest batting average, and they showed their offensive power throughout most of the playoffs. Does that sound about right to you?
I think it makes a world of sense, and credit to the Jays. We're in the generation right now where it's all about analytics. It's all about launch angle and how you don't want to move runners station to station, but the Jays kind of defied the odds. And I get it. Over 162 game regular season, look, you can trust some of the numbers, and you have to lean on some of those power metrics, that it's better in this day and age to have a guy that hits 220 but can put 50 balls over the fence. But in the postseason, you need to try and be able to manufacture runs. And I think that's what made the Jays such a difficult out. I'll almost say it was like their superpower. They put bats on balls, they made contact. And last I checked, guys, it's harder to record an out when a player actually has to make a play in the field than when the fielders can sit in the outfield and pick dandelions, leaning on a staff to strike everybody out. So you can add a frontline arm, bolster that bullpen a little bit, and continue to build around this new age thought process. It almost reminds me of what old is new, and try and take advantage of what it's like to win games in October. That's very different when you're trying to win a best of 3 series in the middle of May through early June.
I was sitting having a burger yesterday. I'm currently a judge in my hometown of Peterborough, Ontario, to find the best burger in town. It's the greatest job I've ever had. So watching the sports channels on mute, and I saw one of them talking about who's better right now, Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is like a dream week with the Bucks and Bills playing this weekend, Todd.
And I think the one thing that we do have to factor into this game is Mother Nature will potentially have her say and who comes out victorious between the Bills and Bucks. I mean, we've seen this total. Toolsy, cover your ears. Open at 50.5, now dropped to 47. Oh. We know we have to check the weather in Western New York hour by hour. But look, if Josh Allen had the weapons that Baker Mayfield had, if he was able to play in pristine conditions more often than not, Josh Allen would be putting up gaudy video game-like numbers. There's not a receiver right now on this Bills roster other than Dalton Kincaid that can separate with a high level of confidence and allow Josh Allen to take some of those easy throws. I mean, go through that receiving room. They used a high draft pick on Keon Coleman. He's been a little bit of a bust, at least to this point, kind of a one-trick pony. Khalil Shakir is probably their best separator, but he's like 5'6". So even in the modern NFL, it's tough for him to try and get downfield, and he's real banged up. It looks like Gabe Davis won't play this weekend. Yeah, give Josh Allen a Emeka Egbuka. Give Josh Allen a Cade Otton to pair opposite Dalton Kincaid, and give him some of those receivers that we haven't seen a whole heck of a lot of in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And I think Josh Allen will be just fine. Josh Allen is still the better quarterback, but if you're asking me to make a case for one of these two guys to potentially, come from off the pace and throw their hat in the ring for the MVP, I actually think Baker Mayfield might be a slightly better bet at the odds being offered.
So, Todd, all those points are well taken. You made some great points there. How the hell did the Buffalo Bills end up as minus 5.5-point favorites in this game based on the way they've played lately?
It's a very good question, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a little bit more Bucks money come into the market. So much of the Bills' pricing on a week-to-week standpoint is a little bit more perception, and a team who came into the year with their regular season win total in that high 11.5, 12.5 range. They were overwhelming favorites to win the AFC East, which now looks to be a little bit of an uphill battle as New England has raced out to a 9-2 record. So with a lot of the marquee teams, odds makers are real reluctant to kind of adjust their power rating down. But in a game this weekend, look, I think you can make the case that both these teams are in a buy low spot. I mean, Tampa, a little bit disappointing with what we saw against New England, 2.5-point favorite, lose the game outright. Buffalo, essentially a no-show on the road against Miami. I expect Buffalo to be significantly more buttoned up. Do I think they can find margin and win comfortably? Yeah, that's a leap of faith I'm not willing to take, especially with weather in the forecast here. So should be a fun game. And I know we said it for the Bucs last weekend against the Patriots, yet another measuring stick against an AFC East opponent to see how they stack up.
Broncos are at home to the Chiefs. And I wish we had hidden microphones on all the Broncos players this week, because without a doubt, they're walking around saying, we aren't an 8-2 team. We are not an 8-2. We're playing the Chiefs. They're gonna show everyone we aren't an 8-2 team.
The level of confidence, given what we have, or I guess I should say haven't seen from this Denver Broncos offense, has to be waning at an all-time low. I mean, Sean Payton won't openly admit that he probably made a mistake using a top 20 pick on Bo Nix, but he's looked serviceable at best, and that's probably a leap of faith, given what we've seen from the sophomore signal caller. But for the Broncos, I mean, so much of what they've done this season, guys, is defensively oriented. And the problem for them right now, they're going to go into one of their marquee games of the early season without two of their best defensive players. I mean, Patrick Surtain not going to be able to go. I know he's officially listed as questionable or doubtful on the injury report, but I don't expect him out there. And then they're going to be without the services of their leading tackler who anchors the middle of the defense, in Alex Singleton. And not only does he lead the team in tackles, which you can kind of replace, he's the green dot. He gets everybody lined up pre-snap, and his leadership on the field is definitely noticeable. The other area that I think people are overlooking a little bit, yes, Nick Bonito has been phenomenal, and this defensive line is outstanding, but so much of the pressure Denver is generating comes from off the edge. And when you look at the teams that have had success against Kansas City, of course it comes with a pass rush, but it's being able to get pressure up the middle like the Bucs did in the Super Bowl, like the Eagles did without blitzing. If you're coming off the edge, Mahomes can evade that pressure. He's going to have a healthier offensive line than what we've seen over the last month with Josh Simmons returning from a personal issue. And it does feel like you're getting a little bit of a discount here with Kansas City. I'd probably be more inclined to get involved in this game, laying a money line price tag on the Chiefs, hoping that you could slam that back door shut, because we've seen fourth quarter Bo Nix, and who would it shock anybody if Kansas City led this game box to wire, was up by 10, and here comes Bo Nix in garbage time to take a 10-point deficit down to 3 and get Denver in that back door. So lay the price here with Kansas City on the money line. Just risk a unit to win a half a position instead of putting up 2 to win 1.
Okay, Todd, and let's stick with the Chiefs for a moment, who currently sit just outside the playoff picture. It is now week 11, outside the playoff picture, and they are the Super Bowl favorites on Bet Rivers at plus 550 right now. Is that more reflective of this NFL season being a little bit all over the place, or do people really have that much faith in this team?
A combination of factors. I think the topsy-turvy nature of the AFC right now contributes to that, but you talk to a lot of folks, myself included. Look, I have Kansas City right there at the top of my power rating. So if Bet Rivers were to drop them, say, into that 10-1 or 12-1 range, knowing that the Chiefs have a path, I'd be looking to gobble up a small piece of that particular number, figuring that this is a Chiefs team that rounds into form when the games start to matter most. So that's why I think this is the unofficial start of the second half of the season for them against the Denver Broncos within the division. And it was only, a year ago, 2 years ago, where people were panicking after the 10-11 game mark that this wasn't the same Kansas City Chiefs team. And lo and behold, they find a way to get to the Super Bowl and have a chance to win the whole damn thing. But the team that I think offers the best upside and opportunity in the futures market right now at Bet Rivers would probably be the Baltimore Ravens. If they get healthy, the schedule is favorable. And while we've been there, done that with Lamar Jackson not winning the big game Eventually, they're going to break through. And I think the Ravens, for me right now, deserve serious consideration as a legitimate front runner in the AFC.
What's with the Cowboys having the highest total every single week? It's at 49.5. I always point out the highest total. It's Cowboys Raiders 49.5. Even I don't think that goes over.
Well, I mean, that may be my time to jump in then. If you're not advocating for a game to go over the total, Dan, that may mean we're a little bit too low. But it's a Cowboys team that offensively is as good as anybody in the league when they have their full complement of weapons. And they'll have extra time to prepare for this game. 15 days since the last time we saw them. Against a Raiders defense that hasn't exactly been great by any stretch of the imagination. But the one thing that Patrick Graham's Raiders defense has done is limit some of those big explosive plays. And if you're going over a total this high in the NFL, not only do you need explosives from one side, you need a living, breathing, capable offense on the other side. And I'm not sure that we can say that the Raiders actually have that working in their favor. So I'll kind of echo your sentiments. This total opened as high as 51, thought it was a little bit rich. So can understand why we're hovering in the high 40s, even with a Cowboys team that is all gas, no break under first-year head coach Brian Schottenheimer.
One more game, Todd. Sunday night, the Detroit Lions visit Philadelphia. These are two NFC teams that people would have put right at the top of the projections to make the Super Bowl this year, with very mixed results up to right now. What are you seeing in Sunday night's game?
Such a fascinating game because I think it could be a prelude to what we see in the NFC Championship game. And if you ask most people, name a handful of teams that have a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense in the league, they wouldn't point to the Detroit Lions. But here we are. This team is as dynamic offensively as they are on the defensive side of the ball. But they're going to find it tough sledding against an Eagles defense that's extremely stingy. We already saw the impact in just one game their trade deadline acquisition of Jalen Phillips meant to this stop unit. Quinion Mitchell has emerged as a true lockdown corner, and that secondary is only going to get better. The real concern with Philadelphia is we keep waiting for this offense to break out, and it's never great when your number one wide receiver, at least coming into the season, is going on a Twitch stream midweek, telling people to drop him from their fantasy teams. So clearly there's some frustration, and I'll say right now going forward that Devontae Smith has to be viewed as the number one wide receiver for the Eagles. Saquon Barkley looks a little bit like a shell of himself. Maybe that'll change with their center Cam Jurgens potentially returning to action this weekend. Fun game, but if you're looking for high flying and a ton of offense, I don't think you're going to see it here. And it's part of the reason we saw Tuesday morning after Philadelphia outlasted Green Bay 10-7 on Monday Night Football, that total dropped from 48.5 on the opener to 46.5. So I think both these defenses will have some say, but should be a hell of a matchup and one that wouldn't shock me if either team emerged victorious from the Lincoln Financial Field. To the scoreline of 24-21.
Hey, guys, if you're looking for all-stars heading into the weekend, I have to say, Ernie and Chris, who put this show together, there was chaos going on behind the scenes, feeds being dropped, and you never noticed a thing because they're the best in the biz.
Hey, consummate pros. I mean, my IFB is going nuts. It feels like a fire drill. I don't know what the hell's going on, but you know what? When you're surrounded by some of the best in the business, and I, of course, don't mean you two forward-facing gentlemen behind the scenes, we know things go smoothly, and that's all that matters.
That's right. Gentlemen, let's have a hell of a weekend.
Hey, Toolsy, I got to ask you before we get off the air.
Yeah.
Grey Cup this weekend from Winnipeg. Who you got? Saskatchewan, -3.5, -4 right now against the upstart Montreal Alouettes and Davis Alexander. You got to make a pick. I know you haven't watched a game all season long, so pick whichever logo you like more.
Okay, I put my house on the Argos, so that didn't go well. You got to go the Riders.
Yeah.
That sounded like more of a question, Kyle.
No, because Saskatchewan, the province of Saskatchewan, nicest humans on earth. Yeah. So that's why you root for the Riders.
And they don't have anything else to root for.
That's a good point. It's been a long time since they've been able to bring a Grey Cup back to Regina, so we'll see if this is the year.
Thanks,
Go
buddy.
Riders.